Hey guys, STLYoungblood with you, and today we're going to be doing the picking the right ship video specific to combat. Now, I was actually pretty surprised because I thought piracy would have won out in this battle, but that's part of the fun of doing these. So, combat. And combat. Oh man, this could be really long. So I'm going to try and find the best balance that I can do, not to make this take forever. Now, the way I'm going to kind of approach this video is by breaking down the combat ships into several different categories, and then giving you an option at a couple different price tiers to fit your needs, and kind of suggesting different ships that I personally think are superior to others. Now remember, this is all current as of making this video, so some ships will come and go in availability over the time that this sits up on YouTube, so just take it for what it's worth and take a look at what's currently available when you're ready to buy into the game. Now, I think the first category that we're going to start with is going to be the light fighters, and that's going to be smaller ships that either rely on agility or just happen to be smaller or have less weaponry. So, let's go ahead and jump in, and I guess, well, before that, let's go ahead and include interceptors in this category as well. So I don't think the base versions of either the Mustang or the Aurora really fit the bill of a combat ship. So we're going to go ahead and skip over them and get into some of the lower priced options that I do think that fit, and that's going to be the Aurora LN and the Misk Reliant. Now, the Aurora LN is currently on sale for $35 as a standalone ship, and the Reliant was on sale for $50 back when you could get it on concept sale. You don't really think about the Aurora when you think combat, but the LN is just really a totally different animal. The LN has the capability of equipping 4 size 2 weapons, and it carries 4 pretty nasty size 2 missiles. And while the LN is hardly a nimble or a fast creature, and a lot of times it sort of looks like a big juicy target to enemies, at least in Arena Commander, it can at least hold its own. Now, you almost get the surprise factor going for you when it comes to the LN, because no one expects for an Aurora to be a prickly target, or maybe most just assume that it's an ES or an MR floating there, and they aren't prepared for what you can throw their way when they find out that you're an LN. The biggest issue working against the Aurora is the speed, and it's just painfully slow. I mean, you just watch everybody outrun you, or they can chase you down without really any issues. So if you're looking for a combat ship, though, and you're on a budget, it's really hard to beat what you can get in return for your investment with the Aurora LN, even if she is just ugly as sin. The Reliant is a hard ship to talk about since it's just in concept, but we have some information that we can speak to. It appears that it's going to be able to bring a size 3 shield and a size 2 power plant, both of which aren't too bad for a ship of its size, but they're not really great either. The inability to talk about the speed of the ship is what kind of makes this tough, but I think with the description talking about the Xi'an technology throughout the ship and the unique upright flying configuration, the thing's going to probably be pretty agile, and something that's probably more important than speed when you consider dogfighting. Now, the weaponry is actually pretty subpar for the ship of its size, but the reason that I put it on this list, aside from the potential agility, is that it comes equipped with a size 3 tractor beam. Now, the tractor beam isn't going to help you out in combat, but that does mean that on a relatively small ship, you can equip a size 3 weapon. So to put that in perspective, that's like a nose gun from the Avenger on a Reliant. So I think that makes it an interesting option and something that's worth considering, though I don't feel as comfortable giving it the same approval that I give to the Aurora LN, but it's at least worth pointing out. As far as the next price tier, we start looking at ships like the Mustang Delta, the Avenger, and the 325, all of which fall underneath the $70 price range. The conversation was tough enough when it was just the Avenger and the 325, but the Delta kind of throws a wrench in these talks. Let's start simple and say that if you want to do anything but fight in this ship, and you've got to just pick one, the Avenger wins this hands down. I think it's more versatile than all of the other options here. Now, the 325 is limited in its cargo capacity, and the Delta has none. The Avenger also comes with holding cells, which opens up bounty hunting possibilities for you. But if we're just talking about pure combat, each has a few things going for it. The Delta has a stealthy armor, which is helping to keep its signature low, helping you to stay off the enemy's radar for longer periods of time, meaning that you might be able to sneak up on people a little bit better. And in a ship that's fairly breakable like the Mustang, that is a huge perk. The Delta also has another perk that I think really stands out, and that's unique to the Deltas, and that's the rocket pods. These are going to be your unguided rockets that you just fire in a straight line. And they're not necessarily easy to use against small and agile targets, but if you land them, they do a significant amount of damage, and against larger targets like freelancers and bombers, it's going to be just flat out downright nasty. Now, the Delta is the slowest of the group though, but it does pack a punch a little bit above its weight class. So if you want the most unique of the three, or like the idea of 4 guns and rockets over missiles, or value stealth, then the Delta is the ship for you out of these three. From there, we get to the old standalone argument, the 325 versus the Avenger. And I think in a fight, just a good old-fashioned slugfest, I had picked the 325 to win before. I think it comes with advanced targeting software designed to help targeting your enemies, and it even lets you get missiles off on multiple targets at once. It also comes with the mass driver on the nose that does some serious damage, and earlier in development, the wingtip Omni-Sky lasers were kind of the king of Arena Commander. That being said, though, balance has then kind of stepped in, and the ship has kind of lost a little bit of its bite. And the thing that you have to consider with the 325 is that it's basically a luxury ship with weapons. It's kind of like a combat Lexus. So while the 325 has merely adopted the combat, the Avenger was really born into it. The Avenger has this nasty nose gun on the front of the ship, obviously on the nose, and if you prefer the ability to kind of spam your weapon, the Gatling gun on the Avenger definitely gives you that spam ability over the slower firing mass driver. And if that's the way you want to go, then you've kind of already made your choice. The speed and agility of the ships are actually pretty similar, and while I think the Avenger can take a little bit more damage and keep fighting, it isn't a huge difference. Another perk for the 325 is the larger missile size, which, if you can make it hit, is going to do quite a bit more damage. I think for me, with the recent balancing changes that I've seen, I've jumped to the Avenger being the better choice here, but frankly, it's really, really close. The versatility of the Avenger, though, gives it just another nod in that direction, but you really can't go wrong with either ship, as I really do like them both quite a bit. From here, we're going to jump into the Fast and the Furious and talk about some of the pricier options that also tend to have kind of speed on their side. And that's going to be the M50, the 350R, the Gladius, and the Sabre. Now, all of these ships were created with speed in mind, and we have the M50 and the 350R to fly right now, and the speed that both have in Arena Commander make them just really nasty to deal with. Now, while these are both really just kind of racers at heart, combat is still a very real option for them, making them great at doing things like scouting or being interceptors and just the light fighter role. The top speed of 280 for the M50 is a little bit slower than the 350R at 300 meters per second, but at those speeds, they're really blowing everything else away. The M50 has a smaller profile, and I do feel it is a little bit more agile than the 350, but it does come with two major drawbacks, being less weaponry and less durability. I feel like the M50 is more of a pest than anything, whereas the 350R is a true force to be reckoned with. A size 2 nose gun, the same weapons on the wings, and the ability to equip missile pylons at size 3 really kind of makes it a fearsome foe. It's almost like a fast 325, and we've already talked about the 325 being able to be an effective fighter. It's faster than everything, it's nimble, and it's really just got a lot of bite overall. So if there was a ship to be the kind of champion of Arena Commander right now, at least in my eyes, and especially at least in this light fighter category, I could very easily give that award to the 350. Now, if you want a ship that's a great scout, interceptor, racer, or fighter, and you don't mind the $125 price tag, check out the 350 next time it's on sale, because I personally really like the ship, and I think long-term it's got some good goals. The Gladius and the Sabre are kind of an interesting pair, because the Sabre seems like it's almost a direct upgrade to the Gladius. The Sabre is bigger, it's probably faster, it has redundant systems, it's newer, and it has bigger weapons. Just about everything is going for the Sabre, except for the price. The Sabre currently goes for $170, it just ended its concept sale, making it one of the most expensive fighters we've seen released yet. The Gladius is $90, and the Gladius, with all that being said, is still a great ship. I love the design, I think it flies like a dream. I wish it had a little bit larger weaponry, but you can't really get everything that you want. So of all the flyable light fighters right now, it's actually my favorite ship of the group. It's nimble, it's pretty fast, and I think it's incredibly well-rounded, on the ship as a whole, and I really like the design too. Now, if the Sabre is in your price range, it's probably going to be one of the best options out there. Of this group though, I'd probably cross off the M50 and say you should go with the Gladius or the Sabre, primarily just because both of those were built for fighting, while the others just happen to do it well. Another ship that's not currently available, but sort of fits into this group, is one of the strange ducks of the group, and that's the Xi'an Scout, or the Kar-2-Al. Now, this ship was initially sold at $150, and is probably going to be the most agile ship in the game, or at least from what we've seen to this point. I'm not expecting it to be crazy fast, however, the design with the primary thrusters actually sitting on a sort of gimbal themselves is going to be what gives this ship the maneuverability that it really needs, and that we kind of dream about when we think about this crazy alien ship. This ship is basically, I don't know, if you buy this ship, you really need to go out the description, because we've got very limited information about this ship since it was released quite a while ago. we know that it has a vertical or horizontal flying formation depending on what you're doing. It's a two-person craft, and it has a really awesome cockpit. It's a light fighter, and it can equip a pretty good sized shield at size 4 and a power plant at size 4, which is really impressive in my mind. So we don't really know about the weapons. They're all labeled as TBD, but my speculation would be that they're probably relatively low-sized weapons. But with a power plant that size and the maneuverability that it's going to have, I think this ship is going to be able to keep firing almost constantly as long as the heat doesn't become a real issue. If you like being a pest or like being hard to hit, but also like having surprising staying power, not to mention this is a two-person craft, so if you have a buddy that wants to ride, I think this has to be one of the most intriguing ship options out there. There aren't many ships that I regret not buying, but this has to be one of them. This is the one that drives me crazy that I don't have in my fleet. So I want this ship, but I don't have it. But oh well, take a look because I think it's freaking sweet, and you probably want to have that same mentality when looking at this ship because it just has a lot of potential. It may not play out that way, but right now, looking at what we know, I think it's going to be awesome. So getting into the Brawler category, there is one ship that kind of stands above the rest, and that's the Super Hornet. It's got bigger shields than the standard Hornet. It's got a ball turret. It's got a canard turret allowing you to equip 4 more weapons, all of them gimbaled, and it comes with a lot of durability. The ship can get a lot of pieces blown off of it without losing a lot of effectiveness, and that's one of the nice things about ships that are already released is we get to see how they actually respond in combat. The gimbaled weapons are really important for dealing with faster targets because, frankly, they're all going to be faster than you for the most part. It's designed to keep a lot of guns on target and to do as much damage in a limited window as possible. So having a second seat for a gunner or a Rio officer is another perk that a lot of these ships aren't bringing to this fight. I would say that the F7C or the Standard Hornet also fits the bill of the Brawler because it can carry a lot of the same characteristics over that the Super Hornet does, and it can also end up equipping the ball turret or the canard turret. It won't have the second seat or the increased shielding though, so don't think you're going to be buying a cheaper Super Hornet unless you're expecting to see a little bit cheaper performance. Either way, with these ships, if you value firepower over movement, you're going to be happy. Now another ship that I sort of put into the Brawler category is in there for a different reason, and that's the Vanguard. The Vanguard is a very different animal though, and the reason I put it kind of in this Brawler group is because it has redundancies in all of these systems for the most part. It's capable of losing just numerous parts and continuing to fight. Now, the Vanguard should be very fast in a straight line, and while the Super Hornet is designed for short excursions, the Vanguard is designed for long-range operations. That being said, it should be very capable of boom and zoom fighting by coming in, unleashing the massive nose gun that it's carrying, and then zooming off. A target like the Super Hornet better hope damn well that it's going to be able to line up its shots and do the damage quick, because the Vanguard is going to be hard to deal with. Now, I'm not expecting a great deal of, agility or mobility from the ship, but, with a ton, and I mean a ton, of forward-facing weapons and what should be borderline legendary staying power, the Vanguard is awesome and actually my favorite ship overall. It's also worth pointing out that the Vanguard variant I'm talking about is the Warden, and it's, about $100 more than what you would pay for the Super Hornet. So choosing between these two comes down to preference. Do you value speed, long range, and an ability to kit your ship out for various types of combat? Then I think the Vanguard is your choice if you can spend the money. If you want the UEE standard, the true brawler, and having a ton of guns and weapons and that are all gimbaled, designed for close quarters combat, then the Super Hornet is going to be the ship and a nice budget option comparatively. If we make a jump to a slightly larger, almost gunboat category, we're going to go ahead and start with the Cutlass and the Gladiator. And the Cutlass I'm talking about here is going to be the blue variety, because it's basically better than the black in every regard. Outside of having low emission engines and a little bit less cargo, but hey, we're talking about fighting. The reason I chose these two to compare is because they both are two-man crafts, and okay, the Cutlass can fit a third, but they both have one turret. And they're pretty close in price, really around that $160 mark. So between these ships, like most other scenarios, you have to really decide how you want to go about things. The Cutlass right now doesn't fly the way it should, or at least it better not be, because it's kind of a pain to fly. It's slower than I would expect, and the thrusters seem to get confused on which direction they should be facing. My general state of mind with this stuff is trust the description, not what you see. And they try to make the ships end up matching what it should be. So these two go about their jobs in very different ways. And I'll admit, it's almost a bit of a forced comparison with the Gladiator really being more of a bomber. Right now, though, the Gladiator brings a large amount of really powerful missiles, and that really works in its favor in the current iteration of Arena Commander, and the weaponry is pretty good. It's not the most agile or the most fast craft, but it's not really designed to be one. It's an anvil ship, and that means it's going to be strong and powerful, but not fast and graceful. The Cutlass should be the latter, though, but frankly, I just can't recommend the ship as a combat ship until they show me they can make the complicated thruster scheme work and balance out the speed. Now, don't take that as a slight on the Cutlass, though, because I still think it's going to be an awesome ship, and I still think it's one of my favorite ships to recommend to people, but as a dogfighter or a heavy fighter, it just doesn't really stack up at the moment. Now, in this cheaper category, the Gladiator takes the vote for me, but there is a far superior option out there, but it does come with a higher price tag, and that's the Aegis Redeemer. The Redeemer is a total badass. It was released initially as a gunboat, but also as a dropship. It was initially released with kind of underwhelming firepower, and CIG responded accordingly with their updates. 2 missile racks, a canard turret, which is under the nose, with size 3 weapons on it. 2 size 4 unmanned turrets on each of the nacelles on the wings, and 2 size 3 turrets that are manned. This thing truly is a gunboat. Add to that the fact that it's got a size 6 shield, a size 6 power plant, and 2 size 5 engines, and you have a total beast of a ship. This thing can probably outmaneuver larger ships like Constellations and Retaliators, all while being able to bring far superior firepower to both. So if you want just a really powerful ship that has a unique design and some versatility to be able to drop Marines, and you can afford that $250 price tag, then get the Redeemer. It's already awesome, and it's going to be really, really great as we get closer to release, and hopefully being able to fly that sooner rather than later. The last category I wanted to talk about right now is going to be the bombers. Now, there's really only 3 options in regard to the bombers, and I think they're all really different, so the comparison here is going to be a little bit tough. Starting on the smaller and the cheaper end, we've got the Gladiator. The Gladiator gets some of the nice options of having the ability to swap out torpedoes for missiles, so if you're in more of a missile boat type of mood, then the Gladiator is a really good option for you, so you can swap it out as you see fit. The Gladiator is also the smallest of these ships, and is really labeled as more of a carrier-based bomber. Now, what that should mean to you is that you're probably going to have a smaller fuel tank, you're probably going to have a less powerful jump engine, or some limiting factor that's going to impact your range overall. Now, it can still equip a jump drive, but it's not going to be going the distance. The Retaliator is what was really purpose-built to be that long-range bomber. The Retaliator is a large ship, and it carries what I assume will be the biggest torpedoes in the game, or at least of these 3 that we're talking about, and has 5 turrets dotted along the ship. So while it's better for protected, basically what I'm trying to say is those turrets are going to better protect yourself when you're in a bombing run, but you need to keep in mind that it's going to cost you more because you're going to have to pay players or NPCs to sit in all of those seats. Now, the fully equipped Retaliator can carry 6 of those clear sky torpedoes, which are pretty massive. Now, it's kind of hard to talk about the size because the stats page to me looks very wrong, but based on the visual and common sense test, the Retaliator brings more pain than any of the other bombers. And finally, the newest of the group, and that's going to be the Vanguard Harbinger. Now, the Harbinger isn't necessarily a dedicated bomber, but it does come with 3 torpedoes that drop out of the bottom of the craft to take out larger targets. These don't appear to be anywhere near the size of the clear sky torpedoes that are on the Retaliator, but they do appear to be a good size. The Vanguard line as a whole is dedicated to long-range missions, meaning that something like the Harbinger is going to be perfect to track down and deal a lot of damage to a larger ship at the edge of a system. Maybe hunting down a notorious pirate lord could be a lot of fun in this ship. So on top of the torpedoes, you've also got a rocket turret on the top of the ship and a lot of weaponry on the front, including what we're going to assume is going to be a very massive railgun. But choosing between these can be easy, but if you have to really know what you want to do between all 3 of these ships. If you want a versatile ship with the ability to carry the largest torpedoes, and you've got the crew to man all of these, then the Retaliator is your choice. But if you want another long-range option, but prefer the idea of a smaller ship with less constraints on the crew, then the 2-man Vanguard Harbinger gives you a ton of firepower for the size of the ship. It's one of the more expensive options in the game, though, so that's something you need to consider, that it costs more to get in now, though it may cost you less in-game later on. And finally, if you want the cheapest bomber, or just the capability to convert to a missile boat, then the Gladiator may be best for you. Speaking of missile boats, though, the Freelancer actually has a combat variant called the Freelancer Miss, and it comes with a missile replenishing system that basically is sacrificing cargo space inside of the ship for the option just to keep pumping missiles out. And while I don't necessarily think that this competes with something like the Harbinger, it is an intriguing option to compare to the Gladiator. Both have turrets, both have the ability to bring a lot of missiles, but I actually think the Freelancer can bring more pain. The primary thing that the Gladiator has in its favor in this battle is that it is more maneuverable. At least it has to be. I can't imagine this Freelancer is going to be able to outmaneuver the Gladiator. Outside of that, though, it's a combat ship made by a combat company. Anvil makes tough-as-nails ships, and the Gladiator should probably keep matching that value. The Freelancer does have decent cargo room and a lot of weaponry and payload, so if you're valuing versatility a bit more, then the Freelancer is an outstanding pick. Stay tuned for a later video where I'm going to be discussing kind of cargo in dangerous areas, and I think this will be included. Sneak peek, wink wink, whatever. Yeah, it's going to be in there. There's obviously a lot of ships that can fit into a combat ship role that I didn't talk about in this video, and it's not because I don't think that they're good combat options, but because I'm trying to really get down to what I feel are your best options. So while the Constellation could certainly fare well in combat, I feel that there's better options out there, so I'm talking about them instead. Never fear though, I'm going to be doing a picking the right general purpose video coming up, and some of your favorites may be in there. Also, I realized that I didn't give some specifics on stats for some of these ships, and that was for a couple reasons. One, I think some of them may be changing, and two, the video would have taken even longer than it already did if I took that approach. So it was more about opinions, and I'm kind of doing some of the legwork for you. But before I wrap this up, I did want to make a note that the feedback that I received regarding fan funding on the YouTube, was limited to just a couple countries. So I decided to finally put up a Patreon page, and you can find a link in the description to these videos or on the channel banner in case you have interest in supporting the channel. Again, as I always say, don't feel pressure to contribute, though I do appreciate those that do. I'm really just glad that you guys are here for the videos and to be part of this community. Up next for videos, let's go ahead and let you guys vote. If you prefer to see a choosing the right, piracy ship, or hell, let's go ahead and do the choosing the right general purpose ship, I'll leave that to you guys. So majority rules, put them in the comments, and we'll go from there. If you have comments or opinions, hit up the comment section. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and take care.